Let me tell you something strange about silence in the digital age. We live in a world where almost everything is shared. Birthdays, coffee cups, sunsets, tears, laughter, even pain, filtered, captioned, softened for approval. And yet some people remain almost completely invisible online. They scroll quietly. They observe deeply. They take everything in, but rarely, if ever, post. You might know someone like that. Maybe you are someone like that. And here's the question that lingers in people's minds, even if they never say it out loud. Why? Why would someone choose to stay unseen when the whole world seems to be shouting for attention? It's easy to assume it's shyness, introversion, disinterest. But for many Black people, silence online carries a different meaning, a different history, a different psychology. Because their absence is not emptiness, it is awareness. For some, silence is not withdrawal, it's control. The power to decide what the world does not get to know. Social media rewards visibility. It praises noise. It turns expression into currency. But for Black people, visibility has never been neutral. Being seen has always come with interpretation, with projection, with assumptions that arrive faster than understanding. So those who stay quiet often see everything most clearly. They watch without interrupting. They read tone before responding. They analyze before reacting. Psychologists have found that people who post less often score higher in traits like self-restraint, introspection, and emotional independence. They are less influenced by social comparison, less dependent on external validation. But for Black people, this restraint is rarely just a personality trait. It is a learned skill. Because most posting isn't just communication, it's identity crafting, an unconscious audition for belonging. Every caption asks, "Do you understand me?" Every image asks, "Will you misread this?" And for someone who has spent their life being misinterpreted, silence begins to feel safer than explanation. There is a quiet moment many Black people experience early in life. A moment when they realize that being visible does not mean being understood. Maybe it happens in school, a joke that lands wrong, a teacher who hears confidence as attitude, a tone that gets labeled aggressive when it wasn't. Or maybe it happens online, a post that invites comments that twist intention, a harmless opinion that turns into a debate about identity. A moment of vulnerability that becomes a spectacle, and something clicks. Not loudly, quietly. They begin to understand that expression costs more for them, that visibility requires translation, that joy can be questioned, that anger can be weaponized. So they begin to edit themselves, not out of fear, but out of awareness. They think twice before posting a thought. They rewrite captions in their head. They wonder how something could be read instead of how it was meant. And over time, posting starts to feel less like sharing and more like performing emotional labor for strangers. This is where the psychology deepens. There's a concept called self-presentational pressure, the constant awareness of being watched. For many Black people, that pressure didn't start with social media. Social media just amplified it. The internet remembers, screenshots live forever, context disappears quickly, and when you've seen how easily Black expression can be flattened into stereotype, silence becomes a form of protection. Not posting doesn't mean not feeling. It doesn't mean disengagement. It often means caring too much about meaning to let it be mishandled. Psychologists call this psychological ownership, the desire to keep certain experiences intact, unaltered, untouched by judgment. When something is posted, it stops belonging only to you. It becomes public property, open to interpretation, mockery, debate. So many Black people choose to keep their memories private, their joy sacred, their pain unexposed. And maybe that isn't withdrawal, maybe it's preservation. But silence online doesn't always come from peace. Sometimes it comes from exhaustion. From years of watching other people's highlight reels while quietly managing your own reality. From explaining yourself too many times. From correcting assumptions that shouldn't exist in the first place. Social media comparison already strains the nervous system. Add racial scrutiny, and the cost multiplies. You start to feel like you owe clarity, tone, softness. So some people step back, not because they don't want connection, but because the cost of visibility feels too high. They want to be seen, but accurately. And when accuracy feels unlikely, silence feels safer than distortion. There's something deeply misunderstood about people who don't post. They're often labeled mysterious, detached, even cold. But the quietest profiles often belong to people with the richest inner worlds. They are thinking, reflecting, observing patterns others miss. They notice how quickly narratives form, how little space nuance is given, how rarely complexity is rewarded. So instead of projecting, they absorb. Instead of reacting, they process. They learn that not everything needs to be witnessed to be real. Some of the most profound transformations happen quietly, unposted, uncelebrated, and after enough private growth, something becomes clear. Being unseen is not the same as being insignificant. It's often where identity is formed, not performed. Social media promised connection, but for many, it delivered isolation. When you stop posting, something unexpected happens. You begin to notice who reaches out without prompts, who remembers without reminders, who knows you without updates. Those connections feel heavier, warmer, more real. People who don't post often build relationships that don't need proof. They don't require witnesses. They don't live for validation. They know who they are even when nobody is watching, and that kind of identity security is rare. Ironically, these are often the people with the most stories to tell, but they save them for real conversations, not comment sections. Their laughter doesn't need an audience. Their growth doesn't need applause. They live life directly, not through a lens. There's also something subtle that happens when you step away from constant posting. Time slows down, moments feel fuller, colors feel richer. You stop thinking in captions. You stop living ahead of the moment. You're no longer asking, how will this look? You're asking, how does this feel? And for many Black people, that return to presence is healing. Because it's a space where they don't have to manage perception. They just exist. But let's be honest, silence isn't always serenity. There are moments of doubt, moments of wondering if you're disappearing, if you're falling behind while everyone else is performing progress. But over time, something steadies. You realize your worth doesn't vanish when you're not visible. It doesn't shrink without likes. It doesn't depend on being consumed. It hums quietly, like a room after a storm. And maybe that's what real confidence looks like. Not loud self-declaration, but calm self-assurance. Because the things that shape you most rarely make it to the feed anyway. Your resilience, your grief, your private victories. They live in memory, not media. Psychologists talk about congruence, alignment between who you are inside and how you live outside. Social media often disrupts that alignment. It encourages performance over presence. So when someone chooses not to post, it can be an act of integrity, a refusal to fracture themselves for approval. They don't need everyone to see their feelings to know they're real. They don't need proof to validate experience. They live fully, quietly. And paradoxically, those who live quietly often feel life most intensely. They notice pauses, silences, details others miss. Presence becomes their currency. In the end, silence is not absence. It is discernment. For Black people who don't post, invisibility was never a flaw. It was an adaptation, a boundary, a form of self-respect in a world that often misreads them. Their quiet is not emptiness, it is depth. And in a culture obsessed with being seen, choosing when and if to be visible can be the most powerful form of self-definition there is. Because not everything meaningful needs an audience. and not every truth needs to be shared. Sometimes the most human thing you can do is live fully, without performing it.